I was feeling very prepared for the swim. I started training in August of the year before, recommended by my coach, and I'd done a fair amount of online research. I've also completed multiple team crossings and a duo crossing. And my twin brother's done 4 solo crossings, so I had a fair few people around me that said you could do this, and so I did everything that they recommended, and yeah, looked forward to the day. So I felt like I would have been fine.
My role in the day was as the paddler. I was going to be doing the whole way through to support Anna on the day. So part of that, yeah, the lead up, just as the key support person, I suppose, being a husband and being across the training and the sacrifices, understanding the nutrition as a pharmacist myself, the importance of the timing to ensure that everything went according to the plan, just so that every little, controllable variable you could focus on, that you made sure those things occurred to support Anna.
I've known Anna for the last 10 years. She's my best friend. We've done lots of things together. And I've seen her dedicated to a lot of athletic pursuits, and I was in awe of her dedication to wanting to do a solo crossing, the preparation and the training beforehand.
On the day of the swim, I was pretty excited because the weather was predicted to be perfect. It was deemed to be the best year ever, and records were going to be broken, so I was pretty stoked.
We all thought, the crew on board, that it was a matter of not if she finishes, it was how long, because she'd put in so much training that we thought she's going to do great today, and everything's going to be fine.
On the start line, I met up with my twin, and that was exciting. Off we went. Met up with my paddler at the right time, met up with my crew at the right time, had a little chat, had some water, took off again. At that point, everything was good.
It started very, very well for Anna. Like, we were off the beach and the conditions were supposed to be perfect for the day. When we started, we could realise that the conditions certainly weren't perfect. I paddled multiple times for soloists, and I could see that the conditions weren't great. And on the timing, we were probably a little bit behind where we wanted to be, because one of the concerns was always hypothermia. So that was one of the key things I was obviously looking out for. But her time was excellent. There was still like 180 soloists behind her all the way, so she was going at a great clip, but slower than what we wanted.
Hello! Hello! What are you doing there? I'm here!
I felt good at 10Ks. I was thinking these conditions don't really feel like perfect. However, I didn't have a comparison, and I didn't feel cold, and that's what I was most excited about. I'm going to be able to finish because it's only going to get warmer and I'm not going to be cold. However, at one of my feeding sessions at 12Ks, I said to my paddler, who was also my husband, I'm starting to feel pretty crap. I'm feeling ordinary, and I have fluid in my lungs. I can hear it. However, I didn't know what it was, and I'd never experienced it before in any of the other swims that I'd done, so I just thought maybe I'd swallowed some water or not. I didn't think it would get worse necessarily, and it wasn't affecting my swimming at that point, so I just continued on.
She was stopping, and when we stopped to feed, she was sort of complaining a bit, and what we noticed was she was trying to come onto her back a little bit more to try and catch her breath. So we were thinking primarily it was just more that obviously her shoulders are sore because she'd had some shoulder problems leading up and getting some physio, and again, just to sort of stretch and to have a different perspective. But now in hindsight, realising that it was sort of problems with her breathing.
Then at about between probably 14 to 16 Ks, I started, in hindsight, I don't consciously remember feeling sleepy. Like at the time I wasn't going, oh my goodness, I'm falling asleep. But in hindsight, looking back, I was feeling sleepy. I was kind of just swimming in a bit of a zone, but I'd been swimming now for 5 hours or something. So I was thinking, well, I'm just bored, and I just wanted to wash off time. So I had kind of got into this. It's a bit like but it happens in the pool even, arms roll over and you just so that's kind of what I thought was happening.
Along the way, with Anna's earplugs in, she wasn't communicating as well as what I had thought. I was in communication with a friend of mine who had completed a solo crossing. At one point, Anna looked very sleepy, and I was texting, and she said to me, "That's not normal, you need to start warming up the fluids, put it out on the boat," and we were doing that. Anna at one point was disoriented, and it was all those subtle signs that I could see something wasn't right, but were completely unaware of swimmers-induced pulmonary edema.
When I got to 18 Ks was when things went really pear, and I was really struggling, and I was on my back, kicking on my back, and everyone's trying to encourage me because I was so close.
We were all invested in her completing the swim. We knew the effort that she'd put into it. We knew the preparation. We were really invested in wanting to celebrate with her at the end for all the hard work that she'd put into her preparation.
The key concern at that stage was obviously hypothermia, which was what we were thinking, that she was just going to be grumpy, upset, depressed. Yes, obviously a degree of hypothermia, but she wasn't complaining of that. But obviously, being in the water, there was obviously going to be a degree of that in place, but had no knowledge at that stage that the real problem was that her lungs were filled with 90% of her own fluid at that stage.
So this is where it became in their mind, I think, oh no. My husband, who was on the ski, was, oh no, a bit devo, thinking she's tried so hard. What do we do? And he said, come on, you're not going to get there on your back. Let's go, let's go. Just a couple of Ks more, and 2 Ks is, half a training session, less than half a training session, so I should have been okay. Anyway, I went back onto my tummy and did 5 more strokes, and then I sank.
It was terrifying, and we screamed for the boat to move the boat around. We need to get her on.
This wasn't hypothermia. Something serious had actually happened because she had passed out in the water. So we then had to work very quickly to get her up out of the water, back onto the boat. We were fortunate enough to have obviously a very strong skipper who knew what he was doing. Also, we had 2 nurses on board, so there was this emergency first aid at that stage.
At that point in time, with 2 nurses on the boat, I knew that there was a life-threatening situation, but I didn't understand what it was. When Anna was coughing up frothy, blood-stained sputum, I knew that this was life-threatening. Immediately life-threatening, she was posturing, which means she'd gone stiff, which is the last signs of life. And Anna's sister and other support crew knew that this was life-threatening. So it all happened very quickly. We just didn't understand what it was that was threatening her life at that stage.
I went basically from the 18K mark via fast boat with the paramedics to Fremantle, and then ambulance to Fiona Stanley. And I then gained consciousness probably another hour and a half after that, very confused as to where I was. I knew I hadn't finished the race, but I thought I could go home. And they said to me, the doctors there said, no honey, you're really sick. You will be probably in intensive care for a few days, and then you'll be on the ward for probably a week.
We had 2 nurses on board. I'm a theatre nurse, and Anna's sister, another crew member, she was a nurse, and we thought we'd probably had the issues around the swim covered, especially Anna had talked to us about hypothermia, and we certainly knew the signs to look for. So we thought, this was going to be a good day, and we'll cross most things that might eventuate.
Yeah, I think the key thing from advice was obviously hypothermia is an important thing to look for, but I suppose here in WA we're not near the North Pole or the South Pole, where the waters aren't freezing, so we're thinking, right, the people aren't going to die from hypothermia, but there are serious conditions that come from that. But knowing also that SIPE could possibly exist is a really important consideration, especially if you see the swimmer starting to turn onto the back or complaining of breathing difficulties. It might not just be hypothermia, there is this other condition in place. And knowing that it is actually okay to make the decision then and there, that you're concerned for their health, that this condition is very serious, and it's just better to be cautious at that period of time.
SIPE is an acronym for swimming-induced pulmonary edema, otherwise known as swimmer's immersion. The condition is a situation that happens because your lungs, inside your lungs, they get irritated and inflamed by the sodium that's in the salt water. So it's a salt water only condition. After the event, when I had seen my respiratory specialist, he was the one that said he reckoned, looking at my lung scans, that I had about a minute or two before I would have passed away. I only had 10% lung capacity left at the end, so I was breathing from a tiny little spot up here, and the rest of my lungs were filled with fluid. I think a lot more communication with the paddler, or with the swimmer, get them to stop, ask a series of questions, ask specifically, how are your lungs feeling? How is your breathing? And look for signs of extension of the neck, kind of trying to create space in the lungs, the swimmer going onto their back, kicking on their back for comfort. That's another sign. And just general level of cognition, because I was very hypoxic toward the end, and I could hear what people were saying. Like my husband, the paddler, was saying, come on, you're not going to get there. And I got angry. I said, just give me a minute. And I put my arm up in the air, just give me a minute. I just need to compose myself. And it was, I was really struggling. So at that point, it should have been, like, I had minutes to go, and you can't believe that someone could be in that. And that's the thing, it can just become so serious so quickly. I needed someone to say to me, you need to stop, you're not well. And I would have then stopped, but I was not likely to stop myself. And I don't think any soloist that has trained for a year that has got to the 18K mark is going to stop themselves.